So this is as you know, the first online summit organized in the context of the Global Network for Equality in Film, formed by CIMA, along with many other nonprofit organizations. Some of them are here today as speakers, and yesterday also we had the opportunity to know more about some of the members. We have FEWA, Film Fatal, Gina Davis, Mutim, El Fond de Film, Lela, Collectif Sankant, El Tourne, Institute for African Studies, Reclaim the Frame, Time's Up UK, Power to Transform, and Vrouwen in Film. So yes, a lot of women, a lot of people here fighting for equality. So I'm just going to briefly present the whole team that is behind this event, because we are talking about what's on screen and off screen. So please, I want my colleagues to come just with the screen so that we can all see who's behind. This is Sandra, Pilar, our interpreters, Pilar and Isabel, Valentina, and with also Beatriz Embula, who I will present now. So, and many other workers and friends also behind the cameras that are not as panelists today, but they are here. So this is really a collaborative work, as you know, and it's a pleasure to be having this summit. And we hope it's only the first of many, because this space is really, it's a space for debate and discussion, and it's been really fruitful for now. So yeah, thank you, Bea, for being here as presentation.
Thank you, Marta, and thank you to the whole team for this incredible dedication to the event. Following the presentation routine designed for this event, I'm going to share with you my favorite book, okay? It's the Delicias de la Maternidad, The Delights of Motherhood by Bucci Emecheta, a Nigerian white writer. And now a brief recap of yesterday. Yesterday we had two wonderful sessions focused on gender equality in filmmaking from different angles. The first panel titled Who Gets to Make Films from Policy to Practice featured experts from France, Brazil, Spain, and South Africa discussing effective measures for advancing diversity and gender equality in the film industry, including finances, incentives, quotas, and affirmative actions programs. The second panel, Representations Matters, exploring on-screen representation and how they challenge stereotypes in audiovisual content, with international panelists sharing insights from their organizations, work in supporting women and marginalized filmmakers. Key discussion centered around the persistent gender gap in filmmaking roles, particularly in directing and writing positions, with statistics showing slow progress toward parity despite various policies initiatives across different countries. The panelists emphasized the importance of authentic authorships, community building, and systematic solutions to address the ongoing challenge in achieving gender equality in the film industry. We thank all of them for contributing to this online collective space, and we are creative. And we also invite other nonprofit organizations to join us. Now I welcome the panelists of the first roundtable of the day, moderated by Eli Masturu. I don't know if I say okay, Masturu, from LS Founders Films. She is a film critic, journalist, and programmer working between Brussels and Athens. Welcome, Eli.
Hola, welcome. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. And yes, so I will be moderating this panel today. So welcome all to Breaking the Silence, Sexual Violence and Abuse of Power in the Film Industry. So in this roundtable, we will address one of the most urgent and complex challenges facing the audiovisual sector today. And we will examine the systemic conditions that have historically allowed these forms of violence to persist. And we have a wonderful panel of voices from Europe and Latin America for this session, where we will explore policies and protocols and research initiatives all across the film making process. So I'm going to start by introducing our wonderful panelists. So first we have Almudena Carracedo from CIMA. She's a documentary filmmaker and producer. She's a board member and coordinator of CIMA study After the Silence, and she will talk about it in a little bit. She wrote, directed, and produced the Goya and BAFTA nominated documentary You Are Not Alone, No Estás Sola. It's about the wolf pack gang rape case in Spain, which you probably heard of. And I watched this documentary on Netflix a few days ago, and I can really wholeheartedly recommend it. So You Are Not Alone. And she also won a Goya and 2 Emmys for The Silence of Others, which also won the Berlinale Audience Award. And she's a Guggenheim Fellow and member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. She teaches at NYU Madrid and advocates for cinema as a tool for accountability and social change. Welcome, Almudena. It's lovely to have you with us. Can you share maybe something inspiring with us that you would recommend?
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Ellie. It's really beautiful to be here, and thank you to CIMA for their efforts and for everyone else to be here. There is a film that I so love, which is Santo ni Loa, Sin Techo ni Ley, Vagabond in English, by Agnes Varda, which is obviously who's this inspiring force, tour de force for, in history, and that continues to be an inspiration for everyone. I'm going to time myself so that, right.
So next to her, we have Barbara Rom from Germany. She's a filmmaker, photographer, cultural strategist, and she is the president of the feminist think tank Power to Transform. She also founded the Culture Change Hub, which provides tools and expertise to promote safe, fair, and dignified work environments. She co-founded Pro-Quote Film, a key initiative advocating for gender parity in German cinema. And in response to the Me Too movement, she co-initiated Themis, an independent counseling office addressing sexual harassment and violence in the film, television, and theater industries. She teaches at Zurich University of the Arts and Film University Babelsberg. Welcome, Barbara. And it's lovely to have you with us. What do you want to share?
Yes, so wait a second. Yes, I hope you see me now. Thank you so much, Ellie. Yes, thank you so much for having me and for the invitation. The film I want to mention is Brainwashed Sex Camera Power by Nina Menkes. I hope everybody knows the film because it's the film about the male gaze and yes, and how we have to change or how we can change this. And yeah, this is my recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We don't see you
sorry.
now.
So I have to.
There.
See me?
We see you. Yes.
Hello. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to see you all.
Yes, but I think you heard me, and it's Brainwashed Sex Camera Power by Nina Menkes.
Yes, a great movie indeed.
Yeah.
And last but not least, we have Juliana Delgado from Colombia with us. Juliana is a lawyer and a consultant in gender equality, sexual diversity, media, and public policy. She is a representative of REC Sisters, which is a Colombian collective of women working in the audiovisual sector to improve, dignify, and promote equity in the working spaces. And to help build environments free from harassment, violence, and discrimination. Welcome, Juliana. What do you want to share?
Hi, Ellie. Thank you so much for inviting us. We are very honored to be here today. So I'm going to recommend a book. We want to recommend a book that's called in Spanish, Las mujeres que luchan se encuentran, which in English will roughly translate to Women Who Find Each Other. Because we think it's super important, like when a main idea in this book is that when you hear a woman speaking and you can see yourself in her, this is the start of of collective action. So this is something inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so I will briefly introduce myself also, so you know who is moderating this panel. So I am Eli Mastoru. I'm a film critic, I'm a journalist and an activist. I was born in Athens and raised in Brussels, and I work between Greece and Belgium. I'm the president of the Belgian Film Press Union and the first woman to lead this organization in 100 years of existence. And I am a member of Elles font des films, so it's French for They Make Films. We are a feminist audiovisual collective in French-speaking Belgium, fighting for equality and visibility in the audiovisual sector. And my recommendation, it's a graphic novel. It's called Prince Charles's Feelings, and it's by a Swedish author, Liv Stromquist. And I'm probably a lot of you heard about Liv Stromquist. I really like her work. And Prince Charles's Feelings, it's a satirical graphic novel that analyzes modern romantic relationships through feminist and sociological theory. And it's also very funny. So there you go. So if we are all good and ready and happy and ready to discuss, I will give the floor to Almudena for her presentation.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So my goal today here is to present a report that CIMA did about a year ago. It's called After the Silence, the Impact of Abuse and Sexual Violence Against Women in the Film and Audiovisual Industry. It is a completely pioneer report, the very first of its kind in Spain. And so we'll just go through some of the quantitative and qualitative results to see how this violence is pervasive and very much structural. So this report actually comes out as a need that emerged in the field after many cases that came out into the light, and you know, everything that we all know from all of us and our friends, we came up with the conviction that this was just the top of the iceberg. And so from CIMA, we decided to do a report, a very rigorous report that, this is the presentation, thank you, a very rigorous report that could help us understand the dimension of this violence. First, because as an industry, we needed to understand with data everything that we kind of already guessed, you know, but also because we needed this data to demand to institutions and the entire industry some structural systemic changes, right? So the report was created for a whole year, actually, by Bárbara Tardón and Nerea Barjola. You see them there in the photo. With a very rigorous methodology that combined, again, quantitative and qualitative. This presentation here, you see the Ministry of Equality, who funded the report, presenting it with us on this very, very important, I would call it, historic day. So the diagnosis of this research is, it's a little bit hard, just, you know, so this is a little bit of a trigger warning. Obviously, the whole panel is trigger warning, right? We're going to talk about very difficult things. Just 1 second with the slides. Thank you. But it's also necessary. It's about 200 pages. You'll have in the previous slide, you have a QR code, and also in the chat, you can also get a link. You can have a full report for the 200 pages, or you can have an executive report of 20 pages, both in Spanish and English. So I'll just share a little bit of what the report is about. And now we can go to the next slide, because what happened after this presentation is that there was a lot of media attention. You can see journalists there on the side, but we had, like, you know, The Guardian, Screen Daily, and obviously all the entire Spanish press system covered it, and it created a very important conversation, right? So here you see in El Diario, an after silence in front of sexual violence in film, action, organization, and collective transformation. And I think that is very important to understand, and that's why we're all here, because we're talking about collective change, you know, for something that's incredibly systemic and structural. So So the data, if you can pass the next slide, is, as you can see, it's very harsh statistics. So 60.3% of women surveyed in the study within the audiovisual and film industry have suffered sexual violence. 81% verbal harassment, 49.5% physical harassment, and then digital or online harassment, 22%. 92% of the women who faced sexual violence did not report it. This is probably a very important number as well. Why? Well, not sure what to do, fear of retaliation, the belief that it would be useless. That means, but something very important is that 94% who experienced sexual violence did tell it. This is not in this slide, but they did tell it to someone close to them. In other words, we do want to tell it, but we do not trust the system. If you go to the next slide. So the qualitative results are also quite overwhelming. So sexual violence is deeply integrated and rooted in the film industry, where it's been naturalized and normalized as part of the work environment. So being part of the industry implies accepting the existence of sexual violence and understanding and accepting them as part of this sort of an inevitable condition, right? So this normalization process reduces our capacity to spot them, to understand them, to identify them, and it perpetuates the system, right? Because the system basically legitimizes them. In the next slide, we see that sexual violence is basically faced by all professionals in all areas of an industry, in all spaces and phases of the professional of the labor industry, right, in the film industry. So in both academia and education, in spaces where people take decisions, in shoots, obviously, in intimate scenes, in parties. These are places that fall often out of the formal work space, right? They're not under contract. For example, a party at a festivity, right, or a festival, right? And also we see this violence, obviously, in the storytelling itself and in the scripts that perpetuate the violence, right? If you can pass the slide, there's some quotes that we wanted to share with you so that all these numbers and talk kind of, are narrowed down into real experiences. I arrived late to a dinner. I see Ellie's face. I arrived late to a dinner of top executives in an institution when I was the president. One of the men in front of everyone said, "Good thing you're here, because if you don't suck my dick, I am no one." Next slide. There was this very famous actor, a protagonist, who when he arrived to the shoot in the morning would say, "Good morning, little horse, how are you?" These are things women, professionals, need to face in a work environment. Thank you. Yes, you can do the next one. When you go to a shoot, you put on an armor, like a shield, right? And when you go to the set or to a meeting, that armor is there for everything that you've learned to protect yourself from, because you know it will happen, right? You can go to the next slide. So the system of impunity is sustained through precarious labor conditions, right? Our industry is very precarious. It's like completely temp contracts, right? We depend a lot on interpersonal relationships. So if we are the whistleblower, it's very likely that we will never be called for a job, right? There is this incredibly punishment towards those who speak, and as we will see later, right? Losing their jobs or losing the capacity to continue working in the industry. And there's this narrative of silence and the imposition of silence. Next slide. Next slide, yes. Okay, so important about silence, and this is obviously the title of our report, we wanted to be a little optimistic after the science. In a way, we have broken the science, but there's still silence, right? And silence is not an individual decision, it is a political and a collective decision, right? So that system of impunity is sustained through the minimization, right? It's not, "Oh, come on, it wasn't so much, why do you complain?" The victim becomes responsible. Maybe you started it. These are obviously, it's a process that happens in other industries as well, right? But they go inherent to all this sexual violence, sort of how it normally goes, right? or the pressure or the fear for endangering the production. You know, you can't say this right now because if we stop the production, we all lose the job, right? So would you really, you know, how can you dare to endanger the production, right? We can go to the next one. Everyone knows, these are real quotes from people in the study. Everyone knows, everyone discusses it, but you ask people, why is nothing done? And the answer is silence. If everyone knows that this guy does this, why is he still there? This is a question that I think most of us have probably asked at one point. Next slide. So what happens then is that there's a system of impunity that is perpetuated by questioning victim survivors directly, by directly or indirectly protecting the aggressors, right? The system doesn't punish the aggressors, and it reinforces their power and basically reproduces their social legitimacy. If nothing happens to you, you will continue doing it, right? So it is okay. So this creates a completely unsafe working environment. And the women, the only ones who really experience punishment at the end are the women. They are the ones who lose their job. They are the ones that are belittled. They're the ones that are expelled from the industry. This is when people say, oh, we are being canceled. Well, we need to understand that the ones being canceled are the women who actually report the sexual violence or who speak against it. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So the sexual violence have big and great impact and consequences on mental health and physical health of women. In their professional decisions as well, many women end up leaving the profession, end up leaving the industry. It also has an impact on work relations on the short, medium, and large, and short term and long term, right? In order to avoid those aggressions and the assaults and the abuse of power. So at the end, what women end up doing is to self-limit ourselves. We reshape our way to dress, talk, and relate to others. There's a quote here that is very representative, right? In the next slide. I cannot be too tough because then I won't get hired. But at the same time, I cannot be too caring because they will misunderstand me. We always have to be super careful. And this, again, is within the work environment. So when we exercise our right to work, we need to be completely careful in who we are, how we dress, what we say, and what we do. The next slide. So the impact is especially strong on young women and diversity, LGBTIQ+, racialized women, or women under precarious labor or immigration situations are especially vulnerable. They are perceived as an easy prey, and they take advantage of them in that sense, right? And they must prove their value constantly in order to be taken seriously. The next slide. I'm going a little fast. I know it's a lot of information, but I want to kind of control my timing. Let's see where I am. Okay. So the report basically denounces a structural culture of silence and impunity sustained by the fear of reprisals, the lack of trust in the institutions, and the absence of real efficient mechanisms. We do have in the study a few recommendations. There are actually many, and so I didn't include them here, but we really encourage you to read at least the executive report. There are recommendations to public and private institutions, to government, and both regional governments and also our governments, right? That in a generalized way do not fulfill their duty to promote safe working conditions to avoid sexual violence and other actions against sexual freedom. If you could go to the next one. We did want to conclude talking about the framework in Spain because, and of course, we know that we are a little bit ahead than other countries in some of these laws, and yet they are insufficient. And so we want to share some of what has happened in Spain We do have a pioneer law, the Only Yes is Yes law, or the law for sexual freedom from the previous Ministry of Equality. It is a law that created a huge backlash in Spain against the members of the Ministry of Equality and a lot of feminists. It is now a European law, or has also been approved at the European level. We have an observatory of equality that depends on the Ministry of Culture that CIMA is part of, and also an observatory of equality in the Spanish national TV. There's also now, and this came out after the report actually, and as a result of the work with the Ministry of Culture, together with CIMA and other organizations obviously pushing for these changes, there is now a general protocol against sexual violence in the cultural sector. There are labor inspections by the Ministry of Labor. Unfortunately, they're still insufficient because they're not fully implemented. And obviously, we still are asking the Ministry of Labor to include sexual violence as a risk in the industry. There's also there are some units of attention to victims that are organized or that are supported by the Ministry of Culture in all the different film academies, both the Spanish Film Academy, but also the Catalan, the Galician, and other film academies as well. It is still insufficient. The last report from the unit of the Spanish Film Academy was 55 women who went to the unit last year. And obviously that is not 60% of the industry. So there's still a lot to do for women to feel safe and to find safe spaces to tell their stories. And that's why we also included here a base movement for visibility and accountability that's called La Nuestra, that is actually right now on an ongoing crowdfunding campaign. It is based in Spain, but it is also international in a way, right? Where women can, in a safe and anonymous environment, share. And again, safe because we know Instagram is kicking us out. So this is sort of the way to create our spaces so that we can keep telling our stories. And I think they will probably post on the chat the link to La Nuestra. In the next slide, you'll see, just to end with something more positive, right? We've presented the report on many places, a lot of the film markets in Spain, schools, film festivals. Here you see on the left, the president of CIMA in Marrakesh. You see the two authors. See, they're wonderful. They even match clothing on purpose. No, it wasn't on purpose. But they're actually wonderful, and they've been traveling with the report as well throughout Spain. And you see here a bunch of women in an action that we did in San Sebastian, where women actually read some of the quotes that I've been sharing. They read quotes from other women because they are anonymous, right? In a collective and very emotional action to call the industry for changes, right? And so basically, we wanted to share this here to encourage all of us to read this report, to have that data with us, right? Everything we've all been guessing, now it's actually data, it's on paper, and to understand the violence that thousands of women experience in their right to work, so that we can all become part of the solution. I don't know if there's another slide. I think this is the last one, right? Yes. Okay. So thank you so much. And thank you, CIMA, obviously, for organizing this and for this panel, which is so necessary.
Wonderful. A lot of great work. So thank you so much for this. The links and a lot of the links that Almudena has been talking about has been shared in the chat. So if you click below, you will see all the references that have been shared. So next up, we have Barbara Rom. So you have the floor, Barbara.
So I have to unmute my microphone. Yes. Thank you so much, Ellie. Yes. So yes, I'd like to start my talk with a best practice example that maybe might serve as a model for other countries. And it's called TEMIS. It's a confidential support center and also a complaints department against sexual harassment and violence. It's a free and an independent point of contact for people working in the film, theater, and now also in the music industry. In 2018, when the Me Too debate finally reached Germany, the Actors Union seized the moment. We saw an opportunity to put pressure on industry employers to establish an independent complaints office for cases of sexual harassment and violence. Because all the major employers, broadcasters, streaming services, production companies already had internal complaints offices, but because of the culture of silence, nobody ever used them. That's why it was so important to create something truly independent. And in the early years, I built Themis together with the legal counsel of the Actors Union, and it's funded by broadcasters, streaming platforms, the Producers Association, the Ministry of Culture, and many other organizations and institutions. And from the beginning, it was important to us that Themis operates from a neutral location, offers both legal and psychological counseling for those affected, for the victims, always allows people to remain anonymous if they choose. They can simply call and talk with no obligation to take further steps. Themis has lawyers who can file formal complaints on behalf of those affected directly with broadcasters or production companies. In Germany, as in many other EU countries, we have strong anti-discrimination laws, and sexual harassment and violence is a form of gender-based discrimination. These laws place significant obligations on employers, for example, the duty to provide a discrimination-free workplace, to take immediate action when discrimination occurs, and to implement preventive measures. Unfortunately, many employers in the film industry have no idea these obligations exist, and most employees have no idea what their rights are. The law also defines how complaint must be handled by employers, and Themis can guide and accompany that process. What they cannot do is represent people as lawyers in court proceedings. Similarly, the psychologist at Themis can offer one or several counseling sessions, but they cannot provide ongoing therapy. And many people who contact Themis, first of all, just want to understand what happened to them. Was that harassment? What are my rights? What are the consequences for the perpetrator if I file a complaint? But due to culture of silence, the very real fear for many survivors have, and the widespread lack of knowledge about the law, it is still the exception rather than the rule that people file a complaint. But the numbers are growing. Themis also runs training sessions for employers and is very visible across the industry, giving talks, raising awareness. For example, every daily call sheet on a shoot now includes a reference to Themis and their phone number. To sum up, more and more people are reaching out to Themis and getting the support they need. It is an important measure against sexual harassment and violence in Germany, and at the same time, the culture of silence remains one of our biggest problems. And I believe that will only change when our culture stops protecting perpetrators and starts taking survivors seriously. And that's why a few years ago, I founded the Culture Change Hub to develop concrete tools that can actually shift things. In Germany, we had several major studies on sexual harassment and violence in recent years for the film industry, and they show the same results as the CIMA study that was just presented. One of them was commissioned by the federal government, and in that study, survivors were asked, what did you need most in the moment it happened? And the most common answers was solidarity from my colleagues. And for me, that's a crucial key, because so far we have been placing the burden of change on the shoulders of survivors, essentially saying, if you break your silence, then we'll act. Production companies, for example, set up reporting systems and name contact persons, and then management wonders why nobody comes forward. And it got to that point where CEOs of major production companies published their personal mobile number on the daily call sheet. but I think they didn't understand the culture of silence or why it exists. And I believe we make more progress when we train people around the survivors. At Themis, a significant number of those who reach out are actually witnesses, people who saw or heard something and have no idea what to do. Should they intervene? Should they report it? How can they support someone affected? And what if that person doesn't want help? And that's exactly where the bystander training comes in, which I developed with the Culture Change Hub. And the word bystander simply means witness or onlooker. And the bystander effect is a well-known psychological phenomenon. The more people observe a situation, the less each individual feels responsible for acting. Everyone waits for someone else to step in. This isn't a failure of character, it's human psychology. On a film set where hierarchies are strong and everyone depends on each other for the next role, the next contract, this effect is even more pronounced. Everyone sees something, nobody acts. In our training sessions, we work with the entire team, not just managers or not just women, but everyone. We focus on very concrete questions. How do I recognize a problematic situation? What can I do without directly confronting anyone? How can I show solidarity as a witness? How do I support someone affected even if they don't want to file a complaint? And the key cultural shift here is we move the responsibility from the victim to the entire team. No longer, why did you stay silent, but why did we all stay silent? And that can change a lot, not always immediately, but sustainably. So, and then another concrete tool I provide with Culture Change Hub is the Intimacy Coordinator Training Program, the first and so far only one in the German-speaking countries. Intimacy coordinators are professionals who guide and coordinate the portrayal of intimacy, nudity, and physical closeness on set. In the US and the UK, they have been standard practice for several years now. In Germany, Austria, Switzerland, we only have just 3 years ago that infrastructure. And why does this matter so much? Intimate scenes are where a great number of boundary violations happen, and often simply out of lack of professionalism. These are among the most sensitive scenes and you can shoot, and yet there are taught neither acting education or directing education. There's no shared language, no methods, no standards. So what happens in practice? Directors often don't know how to express what they are envisioning and resort to crude, hurtful language, for example. Actors don't know what they are allowed to decline and what's expected of them. The line between artistic necessity and violation becomes blurred. Intimacy coordinating gives the whole team a shared language and clear tools. Intimate scenes can be choreographed like a dance using the same professional methods as fight choreography. Everything that will happen is discussed in advance, documented and actively agreed by everyone involved. And that's where the transformation potential lies, when consent and boundaries become a normal, self-evident part of the working process, not an exception, but a professional standard. It changes the entire culture on set. The team experiences what respect and transparency actually look and feel like, and that ripples far beyond the intimate scene itself. Intimacy coordinating is not just protection, it's a model for how we want to work together. And yes, I hope these examples are useful and perhaps inspiring, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel in every country. We can learn from each other, and that's exactly, I think, what this panel is for. Thank you so much, Ellie.
Thank you. Vielen Dank, Barbara.
Yeah.
It's very useful. Solidarity and knowledge are indeed
Yeah.
really important. Thank you. So next up, we have Juliana from Colombia. You have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you, Ellie, and again, thank you for the invitation. First of all, I would like to say that listening to you definitely is a shared experience. the things you are, the data you are sharing, the challenges you are sharing are the challenges we face. So it definitely means that, as I was mentioning before with the book, thank you, Pilar, for crediting Catalina Ruiz Navarro as the author of the book I mentioned, because I forgot. Definitely women who find each other, as we are finding here us today. So I think that's amazing. I want to start, you can see my presentation, right? Yeah. I want to start by saying that I'm a member of Rec Sisters since 2020. I became a member, I always joke and say I'm the outcast of the group because I'm the only lawyer. The rest of the women in the collective are more professionals like you guys, directors, directors of photography, screenwriters. Anyways, I'm the lawyer, and I'm so sorry, for better or for worse. I think I'm part of the problem and the solution, unfortunately, but let's hope I'll be part of the solution. I would like to use these minutes to introduce what we do at Rec Sisters, our work, what's going on in Colombia right now, and which are the challenges we are facing now. Before talking about tools, protocols, and all of this that you are very familiar with, I would like to introduce the people behind our work. This is the Rec Sisters. We, as I mentioned, we're all workers. And I think this helps me introduce one of the main challenges, which is we always talk about challenges that come from outside, the legal framework, the absence of policies, etc. But one of our challenges we have discovered through this collective work is the sustainability of collective and activism with our own lives. We also have families, careers, anyways, professional aspirations. And for us, it's a miracle. We've sustained our collective work for now more than 7 years, juggling all of these ideas. It's very hard. Feminist work is usually underpaid, sometimes not even paid, underfunded. At least this can be the context in Colombia. So one of the main challenges I would like to outline is one that comes from within and with balancing our lives. And I think our story as a collective is proof of that. We have ups, downs. Sometimes we're like, this is too much for us. Can we do this? Can we keep this up? Should we keep this up? Are we doing something? So I think this is one of the main challenges that we also sometimes forget to portray. And I wanted to show the light or maybe spotlight this first. Then I would like to, maybe in line with what Almudena was saying, how did we start? So we started the same as you guys. There was a very famous, like a scandal from one of our most famous directors in Colombia in 2019. And the main questions we started asking ourselves was how many? How many women are suffering violence in their workplace? What type of violence are they suffering? So we did say intuitively, we did the same you did with your survey. We did it very intuitively with no tools at all. We were not funded. We did it with like literally Google Forms and someone trying to tick the boxes. This happened, this didn't happen. This is a 2019 survey. So honestly, we are long due to do a new survey, of course, to see what's the state of the art now. But in this survey, we had like 81% of the women said they suffer from violence. So it's even higher than the one you showed us, Almudena, on your data. 84% of the people who suffer any kind of violence did not report or complain, while 16% did. We had the same findings regarding even if I reported or complained, nothing happened. So this created, again, the culture of silence and sub-reporting, because if I report, doesn't matter, I'm not gonna get anything done. So I would like then to address what Barbara was saying too. Definitely our second challenge, or the second challenge I would like to mention, is the culture of silence. Unfortunately, it is structural to the industry, and I have to say, and it's the moment for me to recognize that work of our Colombian colleague and journalist who just weeks ago launched their own report called Yo te creo, colega, which means I believe in you, colleague. They have 260 cases reported from early 2000 to 2026 from different journalists in broadcasters, national broadcasters, radio stations, public media, private media. And it's amazing because like it's astonishing that this happened. They launched their report like a week ago because there was a recent scandal like pointing to renowned journalists in the private media in Colombia. But what this means is this keeps happening. This keeps happening, and I would like you, if you are curious, to Google the report, which is very interesting. They did something very similar as to what Almudena showed us with some experts from the complaints, and just talking about the different the different problems. And what I like to point out here is if this happens in established media, like broadcasters, or what can we expect that would happen in film, you know, where the work is more temporary, the work relationships are less structured. It means it's more, the informality is also creating the perfect, let's say the perfect field for this type of violence to occur and nothing to happen. We in Colombia do have protocols. We have a decision from our constitutional court that it's mandatory for public and private media, TV and radio, to have protocols for abuse. But to be honest, I think they don't use them. Colombia, and maybe you guys are the same, but we are a very formal country. We love our laws, our protocols, our documents, but in the end, they're not being effective. This is the reality. So this takes me to what did we discuss as Rec Sisters? What do we do with all this? So first, I would like to say that we started with our decalogo. This we did like, we joined with different associations, public agencies, and we created like 10 commandments of working in safe environments. This was super nice. This worked, but again, it's not like what we're seeing now. It makes us challenges also to think like, are we doing enough? What else can we do? Because evidently it's not enough. We also created a toolkit, which we printed it, and it's also online, which is this book, Manual de Buenas Prácticas, also together with lots of people in the industry. It's like a small book that has rules, maybe because also some people, we discovered that for some of our colleagues, this was news, like, oh, I didn't know we couldn't do that, or I wasn't sure that this was violence, or, you know. So the manual, it's like, but it's a toolkit, it has ideas, it has beautiful illustrations. And the idea was to make it more accessible for people to read a bit, understand, for example, that parties or festivals are also workplace, and that they should be considered workplace, and that this is important too, because many colleagues said, oh, no, but this is an entertainment environment, or this is an artsy environment, and we are all, you know, and this is where the transgressions happen because the lines are blurred. We also we do workshops with when someone starts to shoot in Colombia, they contact us. We do a workshop with the crew. As Barbara mentioned, the idea is to have all the crew in these workshops, technical directives, heads, managers, everyone in the workshop, and trying to explain like basic ground rules for working together, and maybe establishing a hotline or a way of communicating if something goes wrong or if there are complaints. And we also did a hotline. We've offered a hotline for 2 international productions that came to Colombia. I have to say that I don't know if the hotline worked because we didn't receive any complaints, So to be honest, I don't know what to tell. I don't know if there weren't any cases of harassment and sexual violence, which would be a great experience, or if people are still afraid to report, as we all know and our data suggests this. What happened in Colombia in the recent weeks with our colleague journalists has made us think also that maybe the institutional framework is not enough. And now I have to say that as a collective, we're also thinking about how do we find other tools that are not necessarily institutional or rigid protocols or these ideas toolkits, or maybe the solution is more from a grassroots idea. We will have an idea of developing listening circles, because as Barbara said, sometimes people just want to talk. They don't want to initiate a legal procedure. Sometimes they don't even want to access psychology. We do provide this for victims who approach us, but sometimes they just want someone to talk. And as I was mentioning, just to come back to the idea which I started this presentation, is that when you can relate to someone, when you can see someone that maybe is going through the same, this helps a lot. And I think we're undermining the power of this collective action, and maybe this is more the way to go than all these ideas. In Colombia, we have, as I was mentioning, we have these protocols, we have the laws, we have the legal framework, but apparently, or what we're discovering is it's not enough. So this is what I wanted to tell you about what we do, and super open to questions and listen. And thank you so much for your sharing. I learned.
Thank you, Juliana. Thank you. That was very insightful and very useful. It's interesting to see through all continents and countries that we are coming to similar approaches and conclusions. And it's also, yeah, we see each other and we are using more or less similar techniques, and it's empowering. So before we start the moderated discussion, I will do also a short intervention of my experience as a film critic in the French-Belgian speaking industry. So what was interesting for me when I started being a film critic is that it was a lot of men, old men, and we were very few young women like myself starting as a film critic, which is funny because when I was studying cinema and art history, it was mostly girls and almost no boys. But it's weird how it changes. And yes, that creates also a feeling of, you're young and you start and you're a woman, and there's a lot of men that that they give the microphone a lot more to. So you feel that, yeah, you have to find your way, and it can be also intimidating. There are like one or two senior figures that will be definitely more respected than the rest and treated differently. So it creates a power imbalance. But I remember when the Me Too movement arrived, and it was really a shockwave, and it helped realize things that we all were feeling, but it helped us put this into words. And I heard it made me, reconsider stories that I heard, and we all started talking among ourselves, women. So it was, yeah, something that motivated me, among others, to join Elles font des films, which was more or less created at the same time. So Elles font des films, very quickly, it was launched in 2017. And you know why? Because in 2017, the French speaking, the Federation of Wallonia-Brussels, as we call the part of Belgium when they speak French, because as you know, you have French and Dutch. So in the French side, it's like two countries in one country. So in the French speaking side, we have the Center of Audiovisual Film Center of Wallonia and Brussels. And it was their 50 years, celebrating 50 years of existence and of film funding. And so they did this big picture with like 50 directors to celebrate 50 years. Okay, so it was 41 men and 6 women. And so it was a big shock. Like we were like, come on, we only have six women. So in response, a group of directors did. Wait, I will show you my screen now that I know how it works. So yes, there you go. They decided to create their own pictures. I think you see it here. Yes. Okay, so this is how Elles font des films was launched, by creating this picture as a reply. So Elles font des films literally means they make films, they as in the female, they for now. So we decided, after this picture, it was launched officially, and we had a manifest that was signed by more than 100 people in a few days. And today we are more or less 200 directors, technicians, different people like making films, because of course it's not only directors, and there's a lot of technicians and also film critics. Like we are also part of the film family, or that's how we consider ourselves also. So since we have launched Elles font des films, in the manifest, what we say that we want to do is create a network of solidarity between female and gender minorities working in this industry. I will go to, we have our website. Oh no, there you go. This is our website. And so we demand, we have different demands, and to end forms of discrimination, freedom to create, an artistic education that integrates works by female and gender minorities, so they are not excluded by the history of cinema. As you can see in the picture, this is our homepage of our website. And of course, we are the plot twist is on the bottom left. We put it in the news. So parity, diversity, inclusion, you can see on our website that we have our manifest, news, resources, and we have taken various steps in the last few years. So some will seem familiar because it's some similar things that Almudena, Barbara, and Juliana also are doing on their own countries. But one important thing that was launched in 2022 is training sessions. So here is it. There it is. So it's training sessions that are called Taking Action Against Gender-Based and Sexual Violence in the French-speaking Belgian audiovisual sector. And Juliana, you said you're a lawyer, and I think it's very, very important and useful to have that aspect, because I followed this training session, and it's very focused on the legal aspect of things, because we have in Belgium laws for workers to protect workers for a safe working environment free from harassment and discrimination. So it was really useful to have facts and, just empowering to learn what we have at our disposal. What is harassment? How do you define it? What exists in the law to take measures against that? Who is responsible? Is it the employer? Is it you? Is it someone else? So it's really we've been doing that since 2022. A lot of we collaborate with the federal level. So a lot of people from the audiovisual industry have done these training sessions. Clearly not enough. We would love it for it to be mandatory, like in France, for funding, but it's not yet. We have had a comprehensive study also that's called In Front and Behind the Camera, a study, gender-based statistics on the films of the last 50 years in Belgium, and analysis of the representations. We have a registry also of women and gender minorities. So if you're looking for a camera woman, a technician, anyone, you can go and look there. We have different categories. And most importantly and lastly, that would be useful in this discussion, you can see it on the left on the website here on the image. We have the guide. So the guide, there you go. It's on our website. So the guide is a publication which is based on the training sessions, actually. It's the same title as the training sessions. And we try to put the essential of what is in the training sessions also in an online form that is accessible free on our website, online. You can, like, this is a screenshot I took from the website. And so also, again, like, it's based on the penal code, on the law, on the work laws. And there's practical cases also. So some examples, very specific examples, not only in the cinema sector, but of harassment cases, recognized as harassment because someone sent an inappropriate email. Like, it's really empowering also to see specific examples. And then you have also practical cases and sheets, like a draft email, or a draft, like if you want to put a clause on your contract, like that you will not agree to do some things, or you have the obligation to provide a safe work environment. There's also examples and practical things that you can use and adapt. So I think these are the things that have really empowered us. Where can I stop? Yes, here, stop. Great. So yeah, these are the most recent tools that have really empowered us, and I think, yeah, creating a network of solidarity. Like, we have a mailing list, we have group chats and stuff like that on a less formal level. And yeah, on a personal level, when I attended one of these sessions, I thought it was useful for other people and that we are sensitized enough and we know enough because we live it. But coming out of it, I was really like, okay, wow, I feel more empowered now because, yeah, I know practical things. I'm not a lawyer, but now I know some actually, yeah, things that can make me act. So yeah, this is where we are at in French-speaking Belgium. But maybe a question I want to ask all of you, so when we jump into the moderated discussion, is, yeah, what is there a measure that you think should be done, or like what we've already seen we've accomplished a lot of things, but you have in mind like a specific thing that still needs to be done or would be really crucial? Like for me, for example, is what I said before, like these training sessions, they are on a federal level, and so they are promoted in every professional person in the film industry, but they are not mandatory. And in France, where these training sessions were inspired by France, and we worked with Collectif 50-50 and people from France to adapt them. And in France, at the CNC, if you apply for funding for your film, you have to follow one of these sessions. It's mandatory. And in France, what's interesting is that the ministry contacted the feminist collective to make these training sessions. In Belgium, it was the feminist collective who contacted the ministry to make these training sessions. And so when we said it would be good so that they are mandatory, they were really scared of that. They were really like, oh, no. Maybe in the future, but for now, it's already so big to have this training session that with the word violence in it, like, let's not scare them too much. So for me, yes, I would say making these mandatory for funding when you apply for your film would be a next step that would be very important. I don't know who has an idea, wants to say something about that. Yes, Almudena.
Do you guys want to? Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
Well, I think it is normally like a set of, I think that trainings are important and it is actually great. The question is, if you do a training because it is mandatory and then you do not enforce the law. So the question is there a law that you can enforce or not, right? In Spain, we do have this pioneer law. And so the best measure to eliminate sexual violence and abuse of power in Spain would be to actually implement and enforce the law that we already have. So I would say first to have laws that protect women in the work environment. As I said before, to make it clear that this is a risk factor at the work environment. I mean, I think it is important to understand when we think of the industry, right? It is that we're talking about work. It's not, I mean, obviously it's very important to protect against sexual violence, but what we're talking about here is sexual violence that occurs when you are working, right? And that is absolutely shocking that So why aren't like labor ministries actually getting involved and you know, and implementing? So there is actually inspections, but they're not implemented, right? There is a law, but it's not fully implemented. There's a protocol, but I don't know if all companies in Spain know that there are these protocols that they do need to enforce. And so I think there is this issue of how do we enforce, how do we create laws that protect us, and then how do we enforce, either through the trainings, but also, again, how do we enforce that people who go through the trainings actually do, you know, the right, take the right steps once they see that something has happened, right? Because of all the reasons that I explained before, there's a lot of fear and a lot of risk to endanger the production, and therefore the livelihood of everyone else who is also your friend and they need their job, right? And so, I don't know, I would say that obviously it is a set of things from my point of view and from many women's points of view, right? There's no trial, there's no punishment, no level of number of years that is going to make men to stop harassing or assaulting women, right? But it has to be a cultural change, right? That in our case, like the industry has to be very clear about what is the culture of rape and why we are here, right? And so, yes, so I'm sorry, I'm just making it very large, but it has to be a cultural change. I don't think laws will be changed if we don't push from here. That's why we are pushing. And even when we do have the law, like in Spain, there was a law that came forth again, you know, with a lot of women being very brave in the Ministry of Equality, and with a lot of women in the streets actually pushing for a change in legislation, but the law is not fully enforced. And so we need to keep pressuring, even when we do have a law, to enforce all of these protocols, all of these laws, and so that we can have an effective kind of and safe work environment.
I don't know if Barbara or Juliana, you want to add?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, I hope so. Yeah. So I don't believe in a single magic solution. That would be too simple. But what really works is a combination of structural change and a cultural shift. I think no tools work in isolation, but together lots of tools and measures create something. But the most important thing for me is that people need an understanding that we are living and working in patriarchy, and what it means that you know, everything we are doing is like influenced by the male gaze. What does the male gaze, how harmful this patriarchal gaze is, and that every time, and this is reflected also in not only our working cultures, but also in all the images we create. And this is, I think, the most important thing that people start to understand. And every time a woman and a man who has not that bigger perspective, they take a camera in their hand and create images, it's propaganda for patriarchy. And they have to understand this. And this is the most important thing for me.
I definitely agree with Barbara that there's no one solution, but I would like to say that in the Colombian context, there's two things that really need to happen. First, there's very precarious work conditions. I think Almudena mentioned this too. The fact that someone works in a production now for a certain employer, and in 3 months they work for a different company. So everything is diluted. The responsibility is diluted because happens in one set. Maybe if you report, you won't get hired for the next project, etc., etc. The fear of retaliation it's very it prevents people from reporting. And as I was mentioning in the beginning, I think even though the laws exist, the legal procedure is a nightmare. To be honest, in Rexisters, we have a company women who have decided to follow the legal procedure and make a criminal complaint or other type of complaint, depending on the conduct, and it's been a struggle. It's very re-victimizing. They are very long. We have women who have not a final decision from a court, and it's been 4 years, 5 years. So I think these two things need to happen. First, we need better work conditions, and on the other side, we need to have legal procedures that understand what does it mean to deal with a victim of sexual violence, because now we don't have that. We just have a system that is very rigid and oppressive and complicated for someone who's not a lawyer to follow through. It's really, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. It's horrible. So this for me would be key shifts.
Thank you. Yeah.
I wanted to add one thing, Ellie. I think what we see here is kind of like how other collectives in other countries have dealt with it, and it is beautiful. Like we also have a decalogue in CIMA. Sometimes we reinvent the wheel instead of, well, that's what we're trying to do right now, right? To be more united. But I think it is very useful. For example, what are the French women doing? What are the Belgian women doing? What are the Spanish women in the industry doing? Could that be useful to us? And you could always go to your government and say, well, this is happening in Germany. Can we, like to know that there have been effective measures that have been taken elsewhere is also useful, at least, to say, look, this is working, right? And so I think that part of the solution, we went individual in each country, but I think part of the solution is actually to stay more united and to figure out collectively, what is working in each country and what we can push, so that, one day we can say that we have an industry that's free of violence.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, and a world, hopefully.
Yeah.
I'm gonna continue this discussion. We have more or less between 10 and 15 minutes left, and we have reserved the space for Q&A at the end. So if you have a question that you want to share, on the bottom, when you click more on the bottom right, there is Q&A, and you can ask us questions. But in the meantime, yeah, I want to maybe talk about some practical cases and examples that we can share from our experience, how things have been handled. We have talked a lot about when you're on a film set and something happens, and you're too scared to say or do anything because it's going to cost a lot of money and you cannot stop, the shooting. So recently in France and in Belgium, so this depends on insurance companies, for example. And in the last years, talking with insurers, some insurance companies now have a clause for these kinds of things where they can halt a shooting up until 5 days for 100,000 euros, more or less. They cover it. So even the fact that this is a possibility can be inspiring also maybe for other countries, but also you can say it happens, like it is possible. And in Belgium and in France, some insurance companies offer that in their contract. Like if we have a case of sexual violence and we need to figure out how we're gonna move on, we can take up to 5 days to stop the shooting and it's going to be covered financially. So I think that's really important because, of course, money is always also an important factor. And I want to share a case with you that happened in France 2 years ago, and I want to ask what you think. I briefly mentioned it before, but so there was a shooting of a film in France 2 years ago, and the director of the film was accused of rape by a technician during a very, very alcohol-induced party on the set. And so what happened, I researched it a little bit earlier. So what happened is the technician left the shooting, was paid in full, and got offered legal help. A special protocol was put in place for the situation, and the director got isolated during the shooting. What it means is that he was in a separate room looking at the combo, and if he had to go back to the shooting with everyone, they would warn it. So if anyone wanted to leave, they could leave the space. And also, he was free. If anyone wanted to see the director in the space that he was, they were free to go be with him and talk with him also. This is the first time I heard of something like this being implemented. Of course, like it's a very extreme also situation of the case of sexual violence happening on a set during a film. I don't know if you've heard about this case or if you have had similar cases like that. And what do you think? I don't think it's necessarily perfect, but I think it's interesting to see like what measures were taken. I think it's important that the technician, if he wanted to leave, he could leave and be paid also. And the protocol was interesting. I don't know how the atmosphere was on that shoot, so I was not there. So it'd be interesting to speak with the people that were, so we know if it was effective or not. But I wanted to hear you on this example, and maybe you have other cases that you want to comment, and were the way they were handled, was it positive or negative for you?
I just wanted to ask you if you know, I mean, I guess that happened while the report was being processed, but was he prosecuted or that was it? You know?
I'm gonna search. I was specifically looking on what happened during the set, but that's a good
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the meantime, while I gather the results, like
Okay.
if you wanna, if you
Yeah.
wanna
I
read.
think, yeah.
Yes, so I don't know. I didn't know about the case in France, but we have actually an interesting development because there's German actress Colleen Fernandez, and she was working publicly against digital violence like deepfakes, and she initiated documentaries. And she made it for public broadcasters in the last year, and now some weeks ago she publicly raised serious allegations of digital violence against her ex-husband and actor and director Christian Ullmann, and accusing him of spreading fake profiles and sexualized content about her over a period of years. And by going on public, she triggered widespread protests, even in the streets, and a broad debate about gaps in German law. And her case is currently accelerating the political response towards stricter rules against deepfakes and digital violence. And we have to wait now what's happening. So, but it's interesting. She really made a difference in the last weeks. Yeah,
Wow,
big debate started.
that's good. Just to answer your question, Almudena, from what I see on Google, there was an investigation, but they decided not to formally prosecute him. So no.
Yeah, this is very often the case. Yeah.
Right. So what we see is that they saved the production and they carried out whatever protocols happened, but then at the end, the one who left the production was the person who experienced the abuse.
Yeah.
Yes,
And God
yes.
knows what happened to her afterwards, right? If you have done this in a production, will you do it again? Like, so.
That's interesting. I don't know what happened after, but I want to say, so this film was shot 2 years ago. I have not seen it. I have not heard about it. I have to confirm my info. I don't know if he got released in France, but in Belgium, and he didn't do any major festivals. Like, I have no idea where this film is.
Right.
I will check. I will check if it got released.
It is, as we can see, it is very complicated. What do you do with everyone else in the set? Do you stop the shoot? Do you not? So I guess this is a solution to be able to continue a film. But again, you're continuing a film with someone who has been accused of something very, very severe, right? And so, yeah, it's a little complicated, I guess. But yeah. I don't know. I guess another solution would be to bring another director. I know
Yeah.
that this is very complicated.
They've
But
done
that's
this
why
in the US,
also
no? I think it has happened at least once in the US to bring another director.
I think it has happened before, but I think that that's where the insurance laws come, and that's why
Yeah.
I was saying that if the labor ministries actually took sexual assault as a risk, then they could push insurances to actually accept it, like you said, like some insurance do. But for it to be mandatory that they can accept this as a risk, because we know it's a risk that happens all the time, right? And to be able to stop production maybe for 2 weeks and we know it's not easy, but there is a crime that has occurred, or a potential crime at least, and until it is investigated, I guess, from my point of view, it is very hard to continue the production and then to kick out the person that experienced it.
I don't know if that person was kicked out or decided to leave. I don't know the context.
Yes, it is true that under those, but maybe she would have wanted to stay.
I think
I don't know.
It's a he, I think.
Okay.
From what I understand.
He would have wanted to stay if it had been a different work environment where he
If
could
he had
continue with
left,
all his coworkers, right?
If the director had left, maybe that technician would have stayed. So we cannot speak on their behalf, like they are not here, but
right. But that's my sort of initial reaction to the solution, right? That at the end is what we were saying before. The only people canceled at the end are the victims.
The victims, of course. Just a side note, so the film did get released in France in 2025.
What's the name of the film, so we know?
The French title, it's called Je le jure. The director is Samuel Theiss, and it got released in March 2025. From what I know, it didn't get released in Belgium, and I think it was a very discreet, like, okay, we contractually have to release it, but let's just forget this movie ever happened.
Right.
I don't know. So we still have like 5 minutes, I would say. So more or less, no pressure. So if anyone wants to add anything, have an example.
Andy, I think there is something on the Q&A now.
Let me see. Yes. Okay. So a question. I don't know. I will read the question from Simona Castoldi. So it happens for us that especially young film professionals share episodes of violence, but we still don't have the structure to really help them. As you were saying, there are a lot of complications. Do you have any suggestion on this? So in terms of Marta San Vicente would like to, and Marta is typing, so we'll give her to type. But yeah, it's this question also links to something I wanted to say, and that Juliana said also, because of course, sometimes there are no structures, sometimes there are structures, but we don't know how to use them, and sometimes the system can seem very abstract and foggy. And I wanted to ask you, and maybe this can answer the question also, like, what do you think about ways of finding and creating solidarity through informal tools? I know that in France and Belgium, there are some group chats on WhatsApp, on our Telegram, of like people working in the individual sector and sharing practices, or even sharing, names on a very smaller scale. Like, even if I have a coffee with a colleague or a friend and she tells me that this person was really, she had a problem with that person, and there was a problem with how they behaved. I know that we cannot act necessarily on a legal level because we don't have enough and the system has failed us. But for example, me as a journalist, I've heard that this actor is disgusting. Okay, whenever I have the opportunity to interview him, I will not interview him and not give him a public space and a microphone. Like, this is on my level what I can do, and warn other colleagues. So we create like a bit of this secret, like, solidarity level network at our own level. I don't know what you think about this, if you have an equivalent in your country, and it's a way of just keeping a bit of sisterhood when we know that the system is going to be more difficult.
Well, in Spain, we do have La Nuestra, as I mentioned before, and this actually emerged from an Instagram account of a journalist called Cristina Fallaras, and people started posting there, and then people realized that they were talking about the same person, even though no one is named. Then some people started realizing that the experiences that someone was telling were similar to your experiences. And a lot of cases have come out like that. Obviously, Cristina is being sent to court a few times from different people, even though she didn't post anyone's names, But that's the reason why getting out of Instagram is important, having our own networks. And that's where La Nuestra is a very good and empowering tool in a safe space.
I would like to share that in Colombia, something that has worked, like, because the problem with the naming is that we have this defamatory possibility hanging over our heads, no? No one can name someone being in a defamatory conduct. In Colombia, what happened that has been successful, and I think someone mentioned it in the chat, Paola Martina, successful from when we were speaking, collective action, no legal standpoint of it, just people acting. What is working is what we call, or we are familiar with, scratching. The Constitutional Court of Colombia legalized scratch or the public, which allows me to legally mention someone who exerted violence to me in a public platform, like any social media or whatever, if I am the victim of the sexual violence, and the Constitutional Court in Colombia considers this freedom of speech, which means I would not get a defamation lawsuit. I'm protected if I do it under the judicial court requirements, which mainly is the person who suffers the violence, which of course I know we all struggle with. I think Barbara mentioned it, when we all see something happening, but we cannot speak about it. No, it's not happening to me, it's happening to someone else. In Colombia, the Constitutional Court validates that me as a victim, I can accuse someone with their name, even in a social platform, if it's me, the victim, and he cannot sue me for defamation. This works a lot, because in the end, this is something that we all want this. We want to know, because we all have all these anonymous complaints that we cannot tell. We as Rec Sisters, we get the complaint, but we cannot say, yeah, it's this person, because then we are in a defamatory problem. So I think this works, and it shows that you don't need to wait for a 5-year legal procedure to be able to point to someone, because the Constitutional Court in Colombia says you don't need a legal decision to pinpoint someone as someone who exerted violence to yourself. So this has, for me, been a success, because it allows something immediate that doesn't require a legal procedure, and that it's also on the victim's agency. No, like it's the victim or the survivor who says, I want to do it or not. In Rec Sisters, we just provide the guidelines, and we tell them, you have this possibility, it's legal if you want to, and they decide whether they want to do it or not. So for me, this has been successful.
Okay, that's interesting, because in the defamation thing is a big problem for a lot of people who don't speak up. In France and in Belgium, we have this too. So
I just want to just add that I think, yes, of course, those networks are good because they help women to break free from learned helplessness. And it's also good to get angry about injustices and violence and starting to act. And I think that we all have to learn a sisterhood and how we can create those spaces and empower ourselves. And that's why these networks, of course, they are good. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have one last question from the Q&A that I will read, and I think we can conclude. This will be our time. So Jara Bustos, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, sorry, asked us, is there any statistics about abuse happening more in male-dominated crews? I feel that at least it makes them more uncomfortable to misbehave if they are surrounded by women. Yes, well, I think most work environments are male-dominated crews, and I think the statistics that we shared are the ones with more with default male-dominated settings. It would be interesting to know statistics happening in female-dominated crews.
Ellie, I think in all these recent studies, it's not in there, but in all the gender studies of, I don't know, last decades and I don't know, very old ones, it's a main part, of course. Yeah. And I think there are lots of statistics, and it's not, I think you have to Google, you can find them very fast. Yeah.
It is true, but if we realize that 99% of the aggressors are men, if you have a female-dominated crew, which is very rare also by now, then you could probably make an environment that there is less assault happening there.
Yes, and in France and in Belgium, you have a lot of female filmmakers working with more and more women, and not only in the makeup and hair department, but in all of the fields, and having also chef de poste. I don't know how you say, like the responsible of a sector, of
So
a department,
yes, the head of department.
Head of department
Yes.
is important that it's women
Yeah.
also, and you can see a shift also in the power balance there.
You can see it. And in our
Yeah.
last film, we did it like that, and it was such a big change working like that. It was really beautiful, actually.
Wow. Okay. So I think it's 37, so I think we're really good on time. I want to thank all of you, Almudena, Barbara, Juliana. It was really, really empowering and amazing to have you with us and to feel united, even though we are not in the same countries, but discussing all of this like we were in the same room. I want to thank Marta, Pilar, Bea, Sandra. I want to thank everyone for their preparation, work, collaboration. I want to thank everyone that's in the little chat box here, sending us hearts and claps and messages. It was really, really lovely to I see all the thank yous. You're amazing. So thank you also. And yeah, if Marta or anyone wants to conclude, I really hope that this is an event that we do again in the future.
Yes, thank you very much to all. It was amazing to hear all the experiences. And please stay connected, stay here, because we have an amazing masterclass by Cheryl Dunier, director of The Watermelon Woman, among other titles. So please, we will have like a 5-minute break, and we will continue. Please stay. It's been really such a pleasure to be hearing you all. So see you now in a bit.